It's still recruiting season here for Kentucky basketball, and the Cats just hosted yet another promising in-state prospect.
You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to be taking a look at a four-star prospect that the Cats have just recently hosted. They gave him an offer. He's an in-state kid, Taylen Kinney. Going to talk about what he could bring to the table for the Cats. Also going to answer a listener question. Going to take this back to some bold predictions that we had earlier this offseason. I asked you guys, give me some bold predictions for the upcoming season. I want to revisit a question that one of you asked because you reminded me of it yesterday. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. I want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. And if you are watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the show. And if you are listening on podcast, I would also appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. A four-star guard out of Newport High School in Kentucky, just transferred to Overtime Elite in Atlanta, but he is from the state of Kentucky. That would be Taylen Kinney. Kinney, a 6'2", 160-pound point guard, again, and out of the state of Kentucky in the 2026 class. He just received an offer from the Cats on an unofficial visit. He was talking with KSR earlier today, and this is what he had to say, quote, "It was just a regular visit. I talked to Coach Pope for about an hour and watched a little bit of film with him. I was with the whole coaching staff. We watched film together." He has a return to Kentucky scheduled for Big Blue Madness, which is on October 11th. We talked about Kentucky's entire schedule yesterday, including Big Blue Madness. If you want to go check that episode out on your podcast feed or wherever you are watching on YouTube. But Taylen Kinney, four-star point guard, has received an offer. Kentucky has made it very clear that they are going after these in-state guys pretty heavily. Throughout the first few months of Mark Pope's career, he was able to land Malachi Marino. He is in hot pursuit of Jasper Johnson. As of today, according to 24/7 Sports insider Travis Branham, we don't really know where Jasper is going to go. Branham's most recent information that he was able to kind of give out to us over on 24/7 Sports, he said that it looked like Kentucky was making a major push here right now today, and they were on the verge of flipping him away from Alabama, which it looks like that's the school Kentucky is going to have to kind of fight here over these next few days before he makes an announcement. But you've got those two guys possibly in the bag. If you get Jasper Johnson, you've got him and Malachi Marino. Taylen McKinney, or I keep almost saying McKinney for some reason. Taylen Kinney, I think, would be another excellent ad when you go and watch what this kid does and how he would kind of fit as a cog in the wheel for Mark Pope and his offense. That's kind of the way that I would describe him, cog in the wheel for Pope in the way that and what his system actually wants to do. Again, 6'2", 160 pounds. According to 24/7 Sports, he's the number 28 overall player, number 6 point guard, and number 1 player in the state of Kentucky. That's according to their composite ratings. If you go and look at On3's industry ratings, they have him as the number 33 prospect, number 6 point guard, and the number 3 player in the state of Georgia, again, because he just moved over to OT Elite. On3, their raw player rating has him as the number 49 player. 24/7 Sports, their raw player rating has him as the number 26. ESPN 28th, Rivals 33rd. So everything kind of averages out there inside the top 35 as a prospect. My assumption is that he would be able to rise just a little bit in the rankings as we kind of move closer here towards what would be actually his junior season. This is a 2026 prospect. This would not be joining next year's class unless he reclassified, and I don't even know if that's on the table. As far as what McKinney brings, or said it again, as far as what Kinney brings to the table as a player, you'll notice that he is one of the better assist men in all of in all of high school ball right now. Really, really solid at setting his teammates up, whether that be in transition or in the half court. Energetic, flashy player that loves to get inside the arc and make things happen again with his passing. That's what Mark Pope wants. That's what Mark Pope needs. He needs somebody in the backcourt that, sure, you're going to have all of these different wings and taller guys down the line that can pass, can shoot, can do all of these different things, but you want a point guard that can put up a high assist rate, can get you a bucket whenever you ask him to, but can kind of direct things offensively. You need your 1 and your 5 to be really, really good at those things. Does Kinney need to be a score-first guard? No, I don't think he does, and frankly, I don't think that's how he would want to operate heading into a place like Kentucky. Again, I think that the strength of his game is his ability to pass. He's really, really sharp and on point when it comes to hitting guys that are cutting, hitting guys that are slashing to the basket, kicking things out for 3 balls. At 6'2", 160 pounds, you would expect him as a point guard to be able to do those things. When we've talked about guards on the show here, I've made it a point to identify what Pope is going for in his 1s and 2s. Meaning, there's been a lot of combo guard discussion when talking about these guards that the Wildcats have been trying to recruit. A lot of them possess traits that you would see further down a rotation. Some of them are even 6'4" or 6'5", and if they bulked up just a little bit, there's a world where they could play small ball 3 or just play small forward for the fun of it. Braylon Mullins, I think, comes to mind. 6'5", 180 pounds, I believe. If he was able to take that up to 190, 195, throw him at the 3. Don't put him at the 2, throw him at the 3. There's been a lot of combo guard discussion. Everybody's kind of been a tweener. This is a true point. This is somebody that would walk in and be a true point guard from day one. You would not play this kid off ball. I would not play this kid off ball, just based on what I've seen. The passing is too good. His ability to finish at the rim is very, very solid. His handles are crisp. Is he the best three-point shooter? Don't really see a ton of three-point shots being taken in his highlight film, but I will say he does have a nice shot. I would not have anything to really say about it to knock it. As far as form goes, as far as mechanics go, don't have any major complaints. Just more of somebody that likes to work inside the perimeter. I think that when you look at what he would do in an offense with Kentucky, let's say 2 seasons from now when he walks in as a freshman, let's say Travis Perry and Colin Chandler are still here. Perry, you would want to probably play honestly at your 2 if you were going to try and play Kinney and Perry on the floor at the same time. I know that's a little bit of a smaller backcourt. Both these guys, not the tallest. But I think that what Perry brings you as far as shooting, ball handling, and shot creation goes, you could definitely play Kinney off ball and just have a very uber-aggressive, high-octane, energetic backcourt that's going to push you. And I know that we've talked a ton about the wings and how important those are going to be in Pope's system, but somebody like this can definitely change the dynamic of your rotation. Give him his 2 more seasons of high school ball to develop. And I think that, 6'3", possibly, I think he could grow into. You're seeing a more physical guard if he's able to put on more weight, which I would expect him to put on at least a little bit more. I think that this is a perfect player when you talk about what we've been saying here on the show for so long. You want a guy that can step into your program and be a multi-year contributor. High floor, multi-year contributor. I think this is the perfect example of that, given he is very strong when it comes to the things that he needs to do at his position. Very, very strong. Passing and scoring at the rim. Love this prospect. So excited that they were able to get him on campus and kind of break things down with him. We'll continue to monitor this recruitment, kind of see where things go. I think that Mark Pope and his staff have continued to do just a phenomenal job on the recruiting trail, going after prospects that fit them so well. Let me know what you think in the comments below about Taylen Kinney, somebody that I'm very excited about here, hosting another in-state prospect, the Kentucky Wildcats. All right, I want to get to an interesting question here from one of you guys. You asked me this question, and I'm pretty sure I covered it whenever you asked it when we were looking for bold predictions earlier this year. But I want to kind of dive back into it because you reminded me of it. Now that the full schedule has been released, what do I think about a bold prediction about how many losses Kentucky will take on this year's schedule? Before I dive into that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. For instance, I actually yesterday, this is not a bit, this is not for Game Time, I use them for literally every single event that I go to. Sports, comedy, theater, anything in my area. And I actually was going to get tickets from to go to a concert later on this year from Game Time, and it kind of weeded everything out for me, found me the best deals that I could get for this event, and I got tickets through Game Time. Super fast, super easy to use. They also have the lowest price guarantee on Game Time. They will credit you 110% of the difference if you find tickets cheaper elsewhere. They also have ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. It is the place to go find any sort of ticket for any sort of event that you want to go to. I am not even kidding. I actually just bought concert tickets to go see Post Malone yesterday, which is just really, really funny that we're talking about this today. You need to take the guesswork out of buying your concert tickets with Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. It's America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you today. Because now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a free 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a base YouTube TV plan, you'll be able to watch every single regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. All you have to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Again, that is FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right, continuing along here on the Wednesday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Really appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would greatly appreciate it if you did so. Would love to see 13,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel here shortly. We are getting closer and closer to that number. Thank you so much to everybody who has been tuning in on the podcast feed, leaving your feedback. You can actually leave comments now on episodes on Spotify, in case you didn't know that. So if you have anything that you want to say to me there, you can leave a comment there. Leave a review. Let me know what you think about the show. We are so close to football season and basketball season as well. We are just, 2 weeks away from the start of college football season. Week leading up to it, going to be giving you previews of the game for the Kentucky Wildcats. Going to be breaking down things for the upcoming schedule. Going to give you my official schedule predictions. We're going to talk breakout players. We're going to talk about players that may be under the radar. I'm super thrilled to dive into it here with you guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below about Kentucky football this upcoming season. We're getting so close to being able to break that down. I think Kentucky may be one of the most underrated teams in the entire SEC. And of course, we're going to be able to dive into why here in just a few days. I am thrilled about it. Okay, let's talk about a listener question. That great Kentuckian who's been listening to the show for quite some time, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, one of the mainstays here on Locked On Kentucky, especially when it comes to answering questions. Great Kentuckian had a question about a month and a half or so ago about Kentucky and their win-loss record. And his bold prediction was that Mark Pope and Kentucky lose only 6 total games, 2 in the non-conference, 4 in the conference. So he left a comment yesterday and said, "Hey Lance, 2 months ago you posted a community question asking for a bold predictions for Pope's first season. I said that Pope only loses 6 games. with the official schedule posted, how much more confident or less confident are you with my bold prediction now? I really appreciate the question here. Great Kentuckian, always love hearing from you. Always some great questions so we can kind of dive into some interesting topics. All of you leave great questions. And hey, if you've got a question for the show, leave it in the YouTube comments below. At Locked On UK is where you can find me on Twitter, at Locked On UK. Any questions, send me a DM, tag me in a tweet. I'll do my best to answer it on the show here. So in case you didn't see it, the 2024-25 schedule was released yesterday for the Kentucky Wildcats. We broke it all down on yesterday's episode if you want to go check that out. I believe that the schedule is actually easier than some people may think, kind of diving into where everything lies on the schedule. And this is a little bit of a bold prediction, just a little bit of a bold prediction for the Wildcats, because again, it's really difficult to finish the season with just 6 losses. But in Pope's first season, with such an unknown commodity, with all these different transfer portal players, obviously they're known because there's so much experience on this roster, but how well is the team going to gel? Can they play as good on offense as we expect them to? And can they sort of outscore and outpace their way through some of these games in the SEC this upcoming season? I want to point out here that since 2019, which was the last season that Kentucky really had a competent year with postseason success, since 2019, Kentucky has finished their regular season with 6 losses or less twice. In 2020, Kentucky finished 25-6. Then 2 seasons later, after the terrible COVID year, Kentucky finished 25-6 in the regular season. They've only done it twice since 2019. Since 2018, they've only done it 3 times, because that includes the 2019 year where Kentucky went to the Elite Eight, I should say. The Wildcats have success in the regular season more often than not. The double-digit losses that Kentucky has had these last 2 years is uncommon. It's not normal for the Wildcats. At least it hasn't been consistently normal. Last time Kentucky had back-to-back double-digit lost seasons were the 2014 and 2013 years, the 2 seasons after Kentucky won the national title in 2012. You would expect the Wildcats to float somewhere between 12 to 6 losses this year. And I think that as we get closer to the beginning of college basketball, we may be putting a little too much on the SEC. We may be putting a little too much weight on the conference. I think it's still going to be good, don't get me wrong. But I'm starting to have my doubts as to whether or not some of these programs that bring in these transfer portal players, maybe even throw Kentucky in this conversation as well, can they have as much success as we kind of expect them to, just looking at the numbers? For instance, a team like Ole Miss, they bring in some really solid transfer portal pieces. Players that have stats that you look at them and go, hey, that's a good player at his previous school. You look at a place like Arkansas, hey, that guy was a really good player at his previous school, or hey, that guy was simply an average player at his previous school. I don't know. I don't know. Tennessee, hey, that guy was a really good player at his previous stop. Can he be good for this program? And I was as good as his statistics were a season ago. That's Kentucky's entire roster question, right? Hey, can this guy replicate their stats from a season ago? And can they be average offensively because their tempo is going to allow them to score so many points, right? So I'm starting to have some doubts about, okay, how good is our teams 4 through 16 in the SEC? Because you have Alabama, who I think is going to be very good. You have Auburn, who I think is going to be very good. And then you have your third team. Could it be Tennessee? Could it be Kentucky? Could it be A&M? Could it be Arkansas? Could it be Florida? We don't really know. So I'm kind of sitting here starting to wonder, okay, is it just a bunch of good teams outside of Alabama and Auburn? Or is it a top half of really, really good teams? And then you've just kind of got some maybe slightly above average competency as you work your way down the SEC standings. I made this point yesterday. I want to reiterate it here. The first half of Kentucky's SEC schedule, the Wildcats aren't really facing off against anything that's offensively elite, minus Alabama, right? We talk a lot about adjusted offensive and defensive efficiency. We talk about effective field goal percentage. Only one team in Kentucky's first half of their SEC schedule is even in the top 100 nationally in effective field goal percentage, or at least they were a season ago. That was Alabama. For context, Kentucky ranked 5th in effective field goal percentage last year. Everyone else is like 130th or lower. And there's a lot of teams floating around the 200 to 300 range. Looking at Vandy, looking at A&M, looking at Georgia, if I'm not mistaken. It's not a lot of great offense. And so you may say, okay, well, they're bringing in all these transfer portal players. Maybe it gets better. And maybe it does. Maybe it does for Kentucky. Maybe it gets worse. But if we're looking at most of these teams still having their same head coach, sure, the players may change. And that will sway things to an extent. But the philosophy will, in essence, stay the same. Teams like Auburn bring in transfer portal players. They're still going to run their same offense. Teams like Ole Miss, they're still going to run the same stuff. Florida, they're still going to run their same stuff, right? Or maybe they'll add some things here and there to kind of play into their personnel. But the shell of the program remains the same. You're not breaking that for for 4 different guys you brought in from mid-majors. I don't think any of these teams are going to take any sort of significant leap forward on the offensive side of the ball that will allow them to sort of be as impactful, I guess I should say. I think there are several teams that are not going to take a major step forward on offense that will play, at the end of the day, similar to what they did last year. Or at the very least, they're going to have similar records to what they had last year. Now, maybe their strength of schedule is different. Maybe their three-point percentage is a little bit higher or lower. Maybe they grab rebounds a little bit better. Maybe they do it a little bit worse. Maybe they're more turnover prone. Maybe they're not. But I don't think that there's as much moving and shaking as maybe we once thought. And I think that leaves Kentucky in a good position, because if you're looking at all these different teams on paper, I really like what Mark Pope has done from a roster construction standpoint. I would sit here and say I'm uneasy if I thought Kentucky was not going to be good on offense. I am becoming more and more confident in them being one of the best offenses in the entire nation because of the fact that Mark Pope wants to shoot threes. On paper, you brought in so many different guys that can knock down outside shots. So many different players. The math checks out on paper. Can Kentucky finish with 6 losses or less? I want to kind of run through just the thought of what the Cats could do. What will they end up doing? I think is a different thing. We'll get to our official predictions later on this year. But what could they do? How difficult would it be to get to those 6 losses? Let's break it down here, wrap up the show in just a moment. Before I do that, though, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at Ibotta. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. You can earn hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies and even toys. So you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight that you've been eyeing, or the fancy dinner that you've been craving. You can save on over 2,400 brands and shop at over 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores, Lowe's, Macy's, Best Buy, and more. It's time you join the over 50 million users who use Ibotta to earn cash back every time that they shop. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners just $5 to try Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONCollege. Again, that's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use the code LOCKEDONCollege. All right, wrapping up the Wednesday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Let's answer this question from Great Kentuckian. Let's go through, let's win-loss this thing. Let's play the schedule game. Can Kentucky finish the season with 6 losses or less, 2 in the non-con, 4 in the conference slate? Got my ESPN 1067 pin here. Let's rock this out. Okay, you open the season against Wright State. I think that is going to be a win. Bucknell, we'll call that a win for fun. Duke is, I think, one of the 2 teams that you could possibly lose to here in this non-conference schedule. These are the 2 games that I would expect Kentucky to not be favored in. Depending on how this Duke game goes, if you lose it by a lot, and you don't look great playing Lipscomb, Jackson State, and Western Kentucky, and Georgia State, are you not favored heading onto the road to play Clemson? I think that's a question as well. Are you not favored against Ohio State after you play Gonzaga and Louisville, right? So let's say Duke is a loss for now, right? You start 2-1. Then you play Lipscomb, you win that game. You play Jackson State, not Jacksonville State, you win that game. You play Western Kentucky, you win that game. Georgia State, you win that one. And let's say you beat Clemson, right? You're 7-1. The Clemson game is huge for this exercise. You go on the road, you play in Seattle, battle for Seattle against Gonzaga. We'll call that a loss for now. Zag's going to be really good this year. Then you play Toothpaste, Colgate. Let's say you win that game. Louisville is also going to be another very important game. Ohio State is also going to be a really important game. Duke, Gonzaga, Clemson, Louisville, Ohio State. Those are your 5 big non-con games. Most of them coming toward the end of this non-con slate. For this exercise, you would have to beat Louisville, and you would also have to beat Ohio State, and you would also have to beat Brown before you started your conference schedule. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 2. Make sure I counted that correctly. You've got Wright State, Bucknell, Lipscomb, Jacksonville State, Western Kentucky, Georgia State, Clemson, Colgate, Louisville, Ohio State, Brown. Yes, so you are 11-2 heading out of your non-con slate with losses to the Zags and the Blue Devils. At this point, you'd probably be saying, okay, Kentucky's probably going to be a top half of the SEC team, depending on how they played against Duke, depending on how they played against Gonzaga. You may say that they could be in store for more if they are just able to kind of get closer as a team chemistry-wise, if they're able to kind of gel together. You play Florida to begin your conference slate at home, right? So we're looking for 4 losses here or less. I'll say you beat Florida. I'll say you go on the road and beat Georgia. Mississippi State on the road is going to be tough. I'll say you beat Texas A&M at home. Bama at home is going to be tough. At Vanderbilt, I'll say you win that one. At UT, Tennessee, January 28th, it's going to be tough. At home against Arkansas is going to be tough. At Ole Miss is also going to be tough. Let's say you beat South Carolina. You play Tennessee at home. Going to mark that down as a tough game. Going to mark Texas on the road as a tough game. Let's say you beat Vandy at home. You're at Bama. We'll write that one down as well. You're at Oklahoma. We'll write that one down as well. Auburn at home is difficult. Let's say you beat LSU. Let's say you beat Missouri. Those are 8 wins in the SEC that I am confident Kentucky would be favored, and I would expect them to win those games. Then you have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different games that Kentucky, I think, could definitely lose. Let's break this down here. Let's try and whittle this down to 4. Let's take this group of 10 and whittle it down to 4. We'll start with the Mississippi State game. Maybe State is not as good as we expect across the board. Maybe they're still offensively just challenged. Maybe they struggle. Let's say that's a win on the road, as tough as that may be. I put Texas A&M as a win, so we'll ignore that. Let's say you beat Bama at home in a track meet, okay? We'll call that a win. I'm going to say you lose at Tennessee. That'll be the first loss you take here, which is just insane that would be your first conference loss. You'd beat Florida, Georgia, Mississippi State, A&M, Bama, Vandy. You wouldn't lose until end of January. You'd be probably feeling really good about yourself at this point. Let's say you turn around and beat Arkansas, okay? You're at Ole Miss. We'll say you win that one. Kentucky, I think on paper, is comparable, if not better. Tennessee at home. Tennessee at home. We'll say you win it. Let's just say you win it. We'll say you lose on the road to Texas. We'll say you lose on the road to Bama. All of a sudden, you've got to close out pretty strong here. Of course, if you remember, we did this on yesterday's episode. The final 4 games of the slate here, which include Oklahoma, Auburn, LSU, and Missouri. I think you should win all 4 of those. The only game that you're really concerned about, I think, actually is the Auburn game. They, again, like I said yesterday, they've not won in Lexington in forever. So your 3 conference losses, Tennessee, Bama on the road, or Tennessee on the road, Bama on the road, Texas on the road. You could throw another one in there. You could say the Cats lose at Oklahoma. The Cats lose to Auburn. The Cats lose to Tennessee at home. They get swept by the Vols. I'm really beginning to buy into here. Kentucky making major progress in the conference in year 1. Again, none of these are my official predictions. I was just talking through how could you get to 4 losses in conference, 2 losses in non-con to make 6 total or less. In conference, you can talk yourself into it. There are 10 difficult games, but you can really start to whittle things down if you just think about how these teams may match up. On paper, Kentucky should be better than some of these teams, at least in my mind. I don't remember what boldness rating I gave this on a scale of 1 to 10 of how bold it is. First time we did this. I'm going to say that on a scale of 1 to 10, I think that this is a 6.5 or a 7. I think that this is very possible for Kentucky. Now, could they implode? Sure. Could they be terrible? Sure. Could they fail to do much of anything this year and struggle to barely get in the NCAA tournament? Sure. As of right now, though, I'm predicting different things. I think Kentucky is going to be a good team. I think they're going to be a good team. So thank you, great Kentuckian, for the question. I think this is more doable than maybe we expected earlier this year. So let me know what you think in the comments below about Kentucky's schedule. 25-6 or better. Can they do it? Let me know in the comments below. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at @LanceDawe_. And you can follow the show over on Instagram. That is Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Have a great rest of your day, and God bless.